Some superstars are coming back, some don't really look like superstars, and some backups are opening some eyes. Welcome into the Sporting News Studios for Ram Fantasy Update. I'm Tom Vandervoort. What's a fantasy owner to do? Well, Matt Lutovsky from Sporting News Fantasy Source, he's going to tell us. So let's start with the returning stars, guys like Greg Jennings, Darren McFadden. How do you look at these guys from a fantasy owner perspective?
Well, we think they're going to come back. That's the big thing. We never know for sure until game time with some of these. But yeah, it looks like we're getting Jennings back this week. Sounds like McFadden. DeMarco Murray, he's up in the air. Ben Roethlisberger up in the air. It's tough with these guys because fantasy owners, the big thing at this time of year is stability. You want to make sure your guy is in the game and finishes the game. But you look at something like Julio Jones. 2 weeks ago, he burned owners. He was questionable. He was active, but he came out early. Last week, everyone was scared of him, played. Huge game.
Right.
I always look at it like if your stars are active, guys like that who are that good, and they have decent matchups, which Jennings does, which McFadden does, you want them in there.
There's so much upside you got to.
That's right. I mean, you don't want to lose. You don't want to lose, period, but you definitely don't want to lose with a star on your bench and T.Y. Hilton in your lineup not doing well.
Right. Now, speaking of stars, some are struggling. I think of Antonio Gates. I think of Mike Wallace. Yeah. What do you do in those cases?
Yeah, it's kind of the same situation. You know, both those guys have very high upside. And Wallace is in a situation where we know the quarterbacks have been bad for him lately. Might get Roethlisberger back. He's still getting targets, though. He's had 7, I believe, the past 2 games. The chances are there, just hasn't made the plays. Gates is a little different because the targets are down. But he's still Antonio Gates. He's still a guy that, you know, a couple weeks ago had double-digit fantasy points in 2 straight games. Now he's had under 2 in 2 straight games. But the tight end position this year has been boom or bust in general. So you're not going to find many guys with higher upside than Gates. So it's kind of the same as I said before. You have star players. I think you want them in your lineup if if it makes sense, and in most cases it does.
Now, we always see at this time of year guys getting opportunities because of injuries, and some come through with shining colors. Specifically, you think about Bryce Brown last week, no Sean Marino. What do you do with these backups that are maybe opening some eyes?
Yeah, that really comes down to matchups. That comes down to who they're playing, and you want to look at recent trends. You want to look at touches. I think of Brown, if he's starting again, you really like him. Moreno, I'm a little nervous about Moreno. He got so many touches last week, it almost felt fluky. I mean, that's a Denver team with John Fox's coach who always likes to rotate running backs. So I'm a little worried about him going up against the #1 run defense this week. But backups, it's kind of the same as with stars. I mean, you don't want to lose because you have backups in your lineup if you have stars on your bench. So just look at a case-by-case basis, see who's getting looks and touches, and then try to get them in there if it makes sense.
Okay, now finally, we always got to get from you guys the sleeper of the week. So who do you like this week?
Well, I'm going to kind of counterbalance the Colin Kaepernick mania. And I'm going to say there's another new quarterback out there, Chad Henne, who's playing really well. And it's Chad Henne, so everyone kind of rolls their eyes. He's boring.
I can do that for you.
There you go. He rolled his eyes. That's how it's done. And he's boring. He's old. He plays for the Jaguars, but 20.4 fantasy points in both of the last 2 games. Going up against the Bills, who are allowing the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks.
Right.
He has talented receivers, guys who make big plays, and Cecil Shorts and Justin Blackmon. I think he can continue doing well. And if you were an owner who maybe Michael Vick, you don't know if he'll be back, Ben Roethlisberger, a little risky. I know I said don't keep the stars on your bench, but I think at quarterback, Chad Henne is a guy who can put up points. All
right, there you go. That's Matt Lutovsky. I'm Tom Vandervoort, and once again, you've been watching Ram Fantasy Update. We'll see you next time.